Hello and welcome to the coding walkthrough video for Prototype 0.8, the largest content update that Fortitude has received in its entire development. Now, as you may recall from the plan for last week, the plan for this week was to implement the initial environmental designs in the game, namely Elkalod's or the Mars planet's designs. That didn't quite go as planned for various reasons. If you want to know about them or the details, you can read my blog post this week. It's week 26. But the bottom line is, for various reasons, the environmental designs haven't been finished yet. As a result, I basically had to, at the very last minute, choose a different path to take development this week. I didn't really want to do another quality of life update because I was like, we've had 2 weeks of that. The game hasn't really progressed as much as I'd like it to in the past few weeks, so rather than just let it sit for another week, I was like, let's actually tackle something. So I decided to go back to one of the more neglected mechanics of the game, refueling. It was previously implemented in Prototype 0.2, but it's been somewhat forgotten about since then because obviously we've been working on other things and it's just not been the biggest priority in development. So I decided to rectify that here by making it one of the most important elements in the game. And all this design comes pretty much straight out of the design document that's also on my website, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about the reasons why we've done various things. Also, because it's quite a large update, because I got quite into it over this week, and so it's largely refined and more or less there. And there's quite a lot of code, so I'm not going to go into every little bug fix and nitpick that I've done. I'm just going to give you a general overview of everything that's been changed and the specific bits that are important I'll go through in C#. But for now though, let's go into the actual game. I'll show you the gameplay differences. So as you can probably see, the ship is heading away from you, and that's because we are quite in close proximity to a gas giant and it's getting pulled away. To rectify that, you simply hit Q.
Autopilot engaged.
And it engages the autopilot, as you probably heard there. We've now got sound prompts, or at least limited sound prompts. And the autopilot's been improved. The ship now rotates in the opposite direction to its current movement, so that it gives the kind of visual impression that it's rotating and moving away, or at least compensating for any external forces. So let's hop in the ship. And as you can hear, the ship now has noises, but only when you're inside the ship, because that's realistic. There's no sound in space, apart from when you're actually in inside something with an atmosphere anyway. And we've also got a visual fuel gauge. It's pretty simple stuff, really. There's 4 bars to indicate we've got 40% fuel, and it'll increase or decrease all the way up to there, depending on how much fuel you've got. So let's
Autopilot disengaged.
take the ship off of autopilot and head towards this nearby gas giant to refuel the ship. Let me just bump the time up a bit so we can speed up our journey. And as we head into the atmosphere, the perspective will change, and if you press M, the map has also changed to zoom in a bit more so you can kind of see what you're doing. I'm just going to hit autopilot here so I can talk about this. So as you can probably see, in the atmosphere of the gas giant there are 2 types of cloud. Placeholder cloud anyway, these triangles. These are the fuel clouds, the yellow ones, and the red ones are dangerous. You do not want to go near them. They will kill you in one hit. I do hope the AI voice isn't louder than me, otherwise it's going to be a bit problematic. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to just let the planet's gravity gradually take us down towards one of the fuel pockets so that we can bump our fuel level up, because we're getting a bit lower. We're on 34% now. It's not ideal. Let's get a bit more. So let's speed up time. Speed up time a bit more just so we get there quite quickly. And we're going to come alongside it.
Autopilot engaged.
Let's put the timescale down.
Autopilot disengaged.
And again, just using a mixture of autopilot and my own maneuvering, we're just going to let the gravity gently guide us down to this fuel cloud. Get close enough, and then hit Q
Autopilot engaged.
to engage the autopilot. Ooh,
Losing power.
no, we don't want to do that.
Autopilot disengaged. Autopilot engaged.
So you don't want to be going into the fuel cloud with the ship because it does interfere with the system. So instead, you've got to go on foot using the new tethering system
Refueling.
and refuel the ship. There's all sorts of wacky stuff going on in this gas giant. Gases everywhere. Now I've got to be constantly mindful of those red clouds that you saw earlier. See, there's one. It's on approach because they come towards you
Refueling.
when you're refueling. Right, we've got to get away actually because we're going to get killed.
Autopilot disengaged.
We've got mostly the amount of fuel we need anyway. Ooh. Nice. Yeah, those clouds come towards you. Ooh, we were just in time as well. They're attracted to large concentrations of fuel in particular areas, so they will come towards you while you're refueling because of the ship. We did quite well there. We've got nearly a full bar of fuel. And as you saw, because didn't quite have time to explain before we were rudely attacked, we also have a new tethering system. So basically when you get out, in fact actually it might just work here. Yeah, when you get out, you're attached to the ship via a rope. If you go outside this circle, then the rope will snap, quotation marks, and you will no longer be held by the ship. It's a bit like a bungee cord, as you can see. I'm not touching any keys right now. It's just kind of dragging you around. Yeah, see, it's pulling you back towards the ship. Bonk. And we are just about to escape the atmosphere. Those things are still coming after us, but they won't catch us at this point. We are going too fast and too furious for them. And then once we exit, it should plonk us back into the normal perspective. I hope. Come on. Let's speed up a bit. Oh my god. Yeah, okay, that needs a bit of a fix. Oh well, you get the idea. It's meant to change back to this perspective and then you can use the map again. And now we are refueled, or at least semi-refueled. So that's the gist of the update. There's obviously been quite a few sound effects added to the game, along with this whole new mechanic of refueling and the dangers of that. But it's quite fun, or at least I thought it was, and also took a considerably long time to make. So I'm just going to have a quick sip of the drink. And we're going to dive into the C# behind the updates. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the gas giant itself. Now, much like the landable planets, it's not actually I'll go back into here. It's not actually, these fuel bits are not actually in the physical circular body that you saw we were approaching. They're in a copy of it that goes alongside these surfaces. And the real one is down here. Oh my god, what the hell? Ah, okay. And the real one is down here. Basically, when you go towards it, the ship collides with an on-trigger circle collider there, which then transports the player to the outer edges of this one seamlessly, as you saw earlier, you didn't notice. And these ones have basically everything you need. And the reason for this transportation is because it makes it much easier to customize the planet, because it doesn't look, you can't see it on the map, or you can, but you can't see it on the bigger map, because as you can see it's got all sorts of wacky bits around to kind of beef it up a bit. There's various reasons, but the bottom line is it acts in a similar way that these ones do. You get close enough and you get transport to the surface. The difference though this time is that when you get near to it and you enter into this one, it actually offsets your position depending on which direction you approach from. So if I was to approach from this direction, it would teleport me to this side of the planet, and the same goes for this side and this side. Because whereas with these ones, it's teleported you to the top because you're going down to the surface. With these ones, it offsets you because it's just one big sphere, or circle actually, because we're in 2D. But yeah, so what I'll do is just quickly go through the code for that. It's exactly the same as the previous ones I implemented, but I'll do it all the same. Where is it? Yeah, here we go. So if you collide with something called tagged with Esteban atmosphere, which is the on-trigger circle collider I was talking about earlier, then it sets the gas giant surface I just showed you to true. and it also takes the position of the Esteban surface game object, i.e. this version of Esteban. And then, this is the difference between the normal ones, it takes the offset, which is a new vector 3 that takes the current offset of the player versus the standard planet, and then sets the player's transform position to relative to the Esteban surface game object minus the offset that we calculated here on both X and Y, and the same with the camera. And all that basically means is, as I said, no matter which way you approach this game object, you'll always be transported to the offset. It sounds really complicated, but it basically means that if I come at this thing from the east side, I'll be transported to the east side of it. If I come at it from the west side, I'll be transported to the west, north, east, south. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's the bottom line with that one. And then it puts you right into the normal view, as you can see there, via the is normal view boolean with the map thing that we coded in. I think that was prototype 0.3 that the map was added. Feels like a lifetime ago. Sets the timescale to 1, because if the timescale's like 10, then you're just going to smash into the planet in an instant and you won't know what happened. And sets the in Esteban atmosphere boolean to true. And then down here it does the complete opposite. If you collide with one of these 4 invisible colliders here, then it teleports you. Where are we? Yeah, it calculates another offset, which is the escape offset, and then teleports you to the original Esteban planet, but above it, or to the side of it, or wherever it is that you escaped from. It does exactly the same thing, basically. It teleports you from the outer edge of this surface one to the real one down here, and then disables that one so you can't see it in the map. It sounds awfully complicated, but it really isn't. It's the bottom line there. And I think... Yep, and also, whenever you're within the Esteban surface game object's atmosphere, it enables this gas giant orbit script, which is basically a copy of the orbit system script that we had before. I haven't actually got it open, so I'll just open this. But yeah, so it enables this script, which basically just attracts you to the center of this via gravity. I won't go through this code because it's the exact... Oh my god. What? Okay, that... Oh, right, that's why I pressed C. Whoops, I was going to say. But yeah, I won't go through that code because it's just exactly the same as the orbit system script that was implemented in a previous prototype. So you can go watch that one if you want to know about all the gravitational things and things like that. And yeah, that's the gist of the orbital mechanics of that. So the next thing I coded in was the planetary map, which, as you saw there, was basically the more zoomed in version of the map that happens, and that now occurs whenever you go into a planet, so it's not just a gas giant, it's every planet. And I've basically got that written in here. Basically, if you press M and is planet map is true, then it basically sets the orthographic size to 750 rather than usual 25,000 that you would if you go into the map. Now, I coded this right at the beginning of the week, so I'm trying to see what it is that triggers the... Yeah, here we go. Basically, if any of the inside the planet's atmosphere booleans are true, which are all triggered if you go inside the planet's atmospheres, basically, I mean, it's fairly self-explanatory, then is planet map is true. So if you're inside the atmosphere of a planet, then the planet map is set to true. Again, pretty simple stuff, not massively complex. And got to consult my notes because there's so much code to get through this week. So this is a small edit as well. This just added the first line of the ship's voice AI system. Basically, this was done in prototype 0.2, but this bit has been changed. If you collide with the game object tagged with fuel, i.e. the triangular fuel clouds that you saw earlier, then it takes this brand new empty game object, which is empty for complicated bug fixing reasons that I'm not going to go in right now. The bottom line is this empty game object just follows the ship around. But yeah, so and it's also got a separate audio source on it, just for that is specifically designed just for the AI. So that audio source on that empty plays nothing but the AI noises, and that's basically so that you can have the engine noises and the AI noises at the same time. But yeah, if you're tagged with something called fuel, then and if nothing else is playing, then play the refueling voice, which basically just says the ship says refueling in an American accent with a bit of reverb. And yeah, that's that. Again, these I'm just getting the kind of smaller changes out of the way before I go into the big stuff. So this is the new tethering system. And currently it just enables when you're in the atmosphere of Esteban, but it will also enable when you're in the atmosphere of the other gas giant too. But these two instances are the only times when the tethering mechanic, that's it. These are the only times when the tethering mechanic will be used, because it's not really useful for anything else. Like, I don't want to get out of the ship in the middle of space and just be tethered to the ship, because that would be boring and pointless. So the tethering system only happens when you're within the atmosphere of gas giants, essentially. And basically, if you are within the atmosphere of a gas giant, then enable the circle collider to D of the empty sphere, the empty game object. Yep. Yeah, this empty also acts as the tether. The reason that it's not attached to the ship is because I wanted it to be a separate collider, so that the collider of this wouldn't trigger things that are only meant for the ship. Again, it's complicated, I know, but the bottom line is it's empty and it's separate from the ship for a reason. And that reason is botch hotfixing. Yeah. But anyway. And it also sets the position of the line renderer. The 0 point being at the transformed dot position of the player, and the 1 point being at the transformed dot position of the ship. So basically it draws a line between the ship and the player. And then if the isTether boolean is true, it enables the line renderer, disables the player's gravity. So while the player is tethered to the ship, tethered quotation marks, then they won't feel the effects of the gravitational pull of Esteban, because that's the effect the rope has, basically. And it also adds a gentle force to the player, that basically slowly pulls them towards the ship, kind of like a bungee cord. And also sets the radius game object to true. That's the circle that appears whenever you're tethered, basically, that I showed you earlier. Otherwise, it disables that, and disables all of this stuff. And also sets the gas giant's orbit script to true, which basically means that whenever the player is outside the tethering system, they are subjected to the gravity of the gas giant. And the reason I've done this rather than using the physical tether that we had last week is because it's really buggy. And with this one and a line render, I can simulate a rope rather than having an actual one, which makes it a lot more customizable and a hell of a lot more controllable. And it works as well, which the other previous two tethering systems haven't, so it's got that going for it. Moving swiftly on, we are now going to tackle the fuel system edit, which I'm just scrolling through my notes to see what I've edited. Yep. So the major change for this one is the refueling UI, which has been written up here in a function. A long ass function, but it is a function nonetheless. No, that's that one. Here it is. Display fuel. Basically, if you're inside the ship, or you're remote controlling the ship, or if you're refueling, then the fuel gauge will appear, and it takes each bar individually and makes them active only if fuel levels are above a certain bit. So the red bar will appear if the ship fuel level is above 10%. The second bar will appear if it's above 20, and obviously yellow and green bars will appear depending on how high the ship's fuel level is. And yeah, that again is pretty simple there. And then that's just a function that gets called in the update down here. So that's the display. It's just a simple little UI test just to check if it works, and I actually think it works quite well. And it's just a visual showcase, basically, of how much fuel you've got. And then this asteroid script here has been modified slightly to include the new quotation marks nasty game objects, which are the mean red fuel clouds that blow you up. And it also, actually, that's a good point, it also adds some more mechanics for the fuel clouds. So basically, if whatever game object this is attached to is tagged with fuel and is refueling as true, then transform the local scale, which is set up here, of the game object down by time to delta time. And if the scale is less than 5, then destroy it. And what that basically means is while you're refueling inside a fuel like game object, a fuel cloud, it will slowly get smaller and smaller until you've used it all up. So yeah, that's kind of a nice cool visual effect there. And then if this game object is tagged with nasty, which the red clouds are, and you're refueling, then the game object will slowly move towards you via an add force that takes the ship's position and minus it offers your own position. Christ, I can't speak English today. But it minuses it off your own position, basically, so the horrible red fuel clouds will slowly move towards you when you're refueling, just to give that added bit of danger while you're inside a deadly gas giant. And yeah, and this change also just made it so that if you collide with something tagged with nasty, basically if you collide with one of the red clouds, then you get destroyed. Pretty simple edit there. I've just realised that I forgot to showcase one of the major mechanics of the game, of the new update rather.
Autopilot engaged.
Let's just get rid of that. Yeah, apologies for the length of this video.
Autopilot disengaged.
But it is necessary because this is rather a large update. This won't take particularly long anyway because I'm a pro at this game. Speed up and head towards a game object. So we're going to do what you should never do, which is basically head into one of the fuel clouds. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you've got to go in on foot in order to refuel, because otherwise
Autopilot engaged.
it'll start to lose power. As you can see, everything starts flickering, and then after a while
Power restored. Rebooting systems.
just letting the sound effects do their work there. The bottom line is whenever you're inside the
Autopilot engaged. Autopilot disengaged.
whenever you're inside one of the fuel clouds, it will start interfering with the ship systems, and if you stay in there for long enough, it would completely disable the ship until you float out of
Losing
it.
power.
Losing power, as you can see, it starts flickering, and then after a while, or it would if we hadn't escaped narrowly. But yes, that's one of the major mechanics here, because we found it was far scarier to make you go in and refuel on foot. But there's got to be a reason for you not to take the ship in with you, so the reason is basically it disables the ship completely if you stay in there for long enough. And to achieve that, we where is it? Yeah. I created an entirely new function here. Basically, if the is in fuel function is true, and that is set inside the space navigation script, is just an on-trigger circle enter thing that basically goes, if the ship enters something tagged with fuel, then enable this boolean. If this boolean is true, then the fuel timer, which is a float up there that's currently set to 0, is plus equals time or delta time, so it starts going up as time does. If it's greater than 0.25 but less than 0.5, then these visual thrusters are like true and false. And what that basically means, all of this bit, is that the ship's thrusters start flickering, as you saw there, like a visual flickering that happens. And the noises of the ship, the rocket sound, will start going in and out, as you can see, at various points. It plays the clip and then it changes it to null, so it goes like kind of glitching out and stuttering, before, after 7 seconds, finally completely disabling the ship as the space navigation script is disabled. And one other thing that's actually been added to this script is the changes to autopilot. which are up here. That and because last week, if you press Q, it just slowed the ship down, whereas this week it rotates to compensate, and that's done here via quaternions. So it takes the current rotation of the ship, and then adds another rotation here. I'm just reading this because I haven't actually looked at it in a while. Yep, so it uses a look rotation function, which takes vector 3 dot forward and the ship's velocity, but minus ship's velocity, so that it rotates in the opposite direction. So that basically points away from where the ship's currently going, and then sets the current rotation of the ship to this rotation quaternion that we've set here. Yeah, it basically lerps it from their current rotation to whatever the rotation is, to whatever they're facing, basically. And I think that's almost it. We've just got one last bit to do. Yeah, and this bit here is basically, it's just a small edit that basically means that the rocket sound, the sound, is only played while you're inside the ship and the ship is under thrust. Because as you know, there is no sound in space. So if we press Q,
Autopilot engaged.
you can't hear the ship's sound. But if we head over to the ship, you can hear it. So yeah, apologies for the length of this video. It's been quite a long one, but obviously there's been a great deal to get through. Hope that was at least kind of insightful, if not a little confusing. Again, I do apologise, it's Friday evening and my brain is fried after a week of coding. But yeah, so hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you in Prototype 0.9.